Yo guys, welcome to the Zelda fiction. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got neglected and becomes the king of West? Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. The sky became cloudy and dark, almost as if Kami herself was upset with the world. Then he pointed his golden spear at the army before him, and then with a loud crack. And boom. The army was gone, dead with a massive single lightning strike. Are you serious? That's cool. I want to be like him, Uncle Ichi. Said a 4-foot-tall girl around the age of 5 with white hair, pale skin and grey eyes. Do you think he would teach one of us one day? Said another girl that looked the same, but with the exception of her hair being black. He wouldn't train you, Kuro, he'd train me. Said white-haired girl. Nah, he wouldn't train you, Shiro. Was his reply of the now named Kuro. Uncle Ichigo. Who do you think he would train? Asked both Kuro and Shiro at the same time. Ichigo Kurosaki, the now named storyteller, was a tall young man at the age of 23 with a lean build. He had orange hair, peach skin and brown eyes. He wore a black kimono with white trim, black hakama and white obi, that's the names of his Shinigami clothes, could only sweat drop and then look at the others at the table for help, but all he got was a small chuckle from his friend Naruto and a smile that promised pain if he didn't answer correctly from his other friend Kaneki-ken, father of the twin girls in front of him. Kaneki-ken was not as tall as Naruto or Ichigo, but was an average height of 5'6". He had white hair and grey eyes. He had a lean build as well. He wore a black dress shirt and black slacks. Well, what about you, Nell? Don't you want to be trained by him and become strong? Asked a now frightened man. This got the girls to direct their attention away from him and on the other girl. I don't want to be like what was his name again, Uncle Ichi? Asked Nell. He doesn't have a name, or at least any that I know of, but he has a few titles like the Red Lion and the Painter. Was his quick reply. Well, I don't want to be like this lion guy. I want to be like Papa and shoot things at da bad guys. Nell said with a happy smile as she got off the chair she was sitting on to end up sitting on Naruto's lap. This also got a small smile from Naruto. The twins then directed their attentions back to the storyteller. And would have continued to press on, but were stopped thanks to Ken interrupting. Alright you two, why don't you take Nell back to the compound to see the new koi pond we got? The twins then jumped with excitement and proceeded to drag Nell off from Naruto's lap and out the door with them. There was a calm silence as the three men enjoyed the quiet before the serious talk began. The silence was broken as Kaneki got up from his chair and asked if the two wanted coffee. Naruto and Ichigo agreed to a single black cup and waited for Ken to finish making the 3 cups of coffee. As they sat there, Naruto looked around from where he sat. The building that they were in was a coffee shop named Ri and was owned by Kaneki and his wife Taka, who he suspected to be with Retsu and Kurumi. The shop felt homey with the wall shelves that held decorations from flowers to picture frames and paintings. Below the shelves were waist-high bookshelves with books that ranged from romance to history. As Naruto looked around he saw a wall that had picture frames on it. The pictures were of many things like common costumers and jetagethers that ranged from birthdays for the twins to normal friendly jetagethers, but there was a single picture that made him stop in his observing. The picture was of a smiling woman with green hair, pale skin, and grayish-green eyes, in a beautiful ghoul wedding dress. One look at and if you don't know what I'm talking about. The picture looked to be taken right before the woman was married and brought back happy and sad memories with a bit of guilt as he looked at the woman that looked so happy in the picture. You know it's not your fault. She was happy to spend the little time she had with you and Nell. Kaneki said as he walked back with the coffees on a tray. Yeah, but I wish we had more time. I wish she saw the world that she so desperately wanted. A world where you could be anything and not have to worry about what or who you are. Where everyone's accepted. Naruto's reply was. You know, it's her birthday today. Yeah, I know. I was going to take Taka and the twins to show them where she was buried. The twins don't really remember her though. They were too young. Kaneki says with a quiet voice. I was thinking the same, but with the tournament coming up I've been too busy. I know Nell doesn't remember her. All she knows is that her mother left her a gift in the form of a mask. I wish she got to know her mother a bit more. I'm sure she would have loved her, Naruto. That got a sad smile to appear on Naruto's face. I know she would have. I mean, who didn't love her? She was so bubbly and fun. She always lifted everyone's spirits and could get anyone out of a slump. Hell, that's one of the things that made me fall for her. Ichigo then spoke up. Well, how about this, when the tournament is over we'll all go. I have to pay my respects and thank her, even after death, for saving Rukia that time on the battlefield. Naruto and Kaneki nodded their heads in agreement. Now come on, let's hear how the wonderful emperor who can conquer our nations and regions is handling paperwork. Ichigo said in an upbeat voice. Ugh, not good. You know, when I said I wanted to an emperor I didn't think this much shit would come along with it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love this country and would die protecting it, but I didn't think being emperor would entail listening to people who complained about sending my royal guard to their neighbor's house to get their chickens back from their neighbor that stole them. I mean really. Who the hell is going to send a royal guard after chickens? His outburst caused his friends to laugh. Even the ever-stoic Kaneki. Hey, don't laugh. I'd like to see you do that. It's utter bullshit, and oh, don't even get me started on the amount of paperwork. At that very moment something happened that will confuse people for hundreds of years, because that day every leader that knew of the horror of paperwork had sneezed. This caused a slight earthquake that was felt throughout the world, even causing a volcano to erupt in a faraway land, thus destroying a nearby city. For that day will forever be known as the Shake. Hey, did you feel that slight rumble? Asked Kaneki. Both Naruto and Ichigo looked at him curiously before Ichigo spoke. No, I didn't feel anything. Why? What did you feel? Something? Never mind, must have just been my imagination. Sorry Naruto, you may continue. Konoha. Minato. Hokage-sama, I understand that it is not at the top of your most important things to listen to or worry about, but I know that they'll become a problem. Especially their leader, he is powerful and is said to rival you in power. Said a man that was covered in bandages. Danzo, I realize that AIM may become a great village, and I know that you fear it. Especially after I heard what their new Amikage did to the previous, but think of it this way. If we support them now instead of fighting them, we would have a very powerful ally, was Minato's response. But if for whatever reason they become hostile, I'll know to come to you. The now named Danzo, who was an older man that had black hair and tan skin that was covered in bandages, looked at him with a blank stare. Danzo, I'm not stupid. I know you've been running root operations, and though I don't agree with your method of training, I do see their benefit and know that sometimes they are needed. If Danzo was surprised, he did not show it, but simply nodded before replying, that is all I need to know. Now, if that will be all, then I would like to speak with my daughter. So please, if you would kindly leave. And with that the old man nodded again before leaving the room. Minato sighed. It was just one of those days where work never seemed to stop, even when the work was finished. It was replaced by more and harder work. Anbu. Send for my daughter, will you? And with that he sensed one of the three Anbu that were tasked with protecting him to fetch his only child Mito. Well, not if you counted Naruto. Naruto, now that was something that he hadn't thought about in a long time. What's it been? 9, 10. No, it's been 11 years since that child was in the village. He thought. It's almost sad, I could have had a fine weapon if I didn't let the villagers do what they did, hell, I could have kept Tsunade in the village. If only I listened to her. Tsunade had gone to him telling him how Naruto would come to her beaten, never telling who it was, and asking that she never tell anyone, but she came to him asking for him to let the beast have some peace. Of course he ignored it and told her that he would try something, but never did. Though now that he thought about it, it probably wasn't the best idea to have the beast run around the village unchained like how Tsunade and Orochimaru asked. He might have slaughtered the village like Kushina said it might. That was another thing, Kushina, his wife. She had told him how the beast would one day slaughter the village and that he should kill it. He never listened though, he thought that there was the slight possibility that the beast was not a beast and his son. That's why he let the villagers do as they pleased. For if he really was a beast he would have killed someone that attacked it, and because of his leniency the beast almost tricked him the Hokage and protector of this village. Mizuki was the deciding factor that had him decide that he was the beast and not his son. 11 years ago. Flashback. Hokage, Hokage. Were the words that brought Minato out of his paperwork. The door to his office was thrown open in a hurry as his secretary came running in. Hokage, a ninja was found on the street about 10 minutes ago and asked to see you. What? What happened? Was it another village? A traitor? I don't know. All they said was that you need to go see him. He's at the hospital. Okay, I'm leaving then. Was Minato's hurried response as he left. Hospital. As Minato entered the hospital he was confronted by a blood-covered doctor. Hokage, come with me, the man doesn't have much time to live, so we must hurry. The doctor said in a calm voice. Who was the man and what happened? The doctor didn't even turn around as he navigated the halls of the hospital. His name is Mizuki and well, it's better if he tells you himself. What do you mean? He was stopped as he saw the man in his ranks that was barely clinging consciousness. Hell, by all logic he shouldn't be alive. The man had a hole the size of a fist in the center of his chest, just barely missing his heart. What happened here? Minato asked Mizuki. Mizuki looked up at him and said in a shaky voice. Red-eyed monster attacked me. Was Kyuubi were the things that were said as he slowly drew his last breaths. Minato only looked at the body that was once Mizuki. Guess she was right, he isn't the son I was hoping for. He killed a leader of this village. Anbu. Give the order to look for the beast and kill it. We have the chakra so there's no need for the body. I hope that he wasn't a beast, but he has shown his true colors now. An Anbu with a cat mask appeared before him. She had long flowing purple hair and had a slender body that showed the training of her Anbu position. She hesitated slightly. Are you sure, Hokage? There may be a reason that he retaliated. He could have been attached. Minato looked at the Anbu agent with a steeled expression. Fine, see if you could bring him in. If you can't, kill him. He then walked closer to the Anbu and whispered to her. Don't let personal feeling get involved. I know that you watched over him on Hirazen's behest and have confronted him on a few occasions with and without your mask. The Anbu stiffened from what she heard and nodded slowly. He may wear the skin of my son, but he is not, and today he has proven that. He paused before continuing again. I was fooled once into believing that he was my son. I won't fall for it again, and I trust you won't either. The cat nodded slowly and disappeared from the hospital. Minato looked to the doctor now. Does the man have any family? Not that we know of. We believed that he was an orphan and the only close thing to family was a girlfriend. Should we deliver the message to her or would you like to, Hokage? It's fine, I'll tell her. She a chunin, so it's my job. Thank you for informing me. Flashback end. The investigation led almost to nothing. All they could get from it was that Mizuki was walking to meet up at a bar and was attacked by the beast and left there to rot as the beast escaped the village with a man dressed in black. He was then interrupted by a knock on his office door and a voice. Father, may I come in? Enter. Was all he said as he looked at his daughter Mito, who was now a beautiful young woman and almost looked like an exact copy of her mother, with the exception of her blue eyes. She was 5'5" and had red hair and a ponytail with her bangs framing her face on each side. She wore long-sleeve fishnets and fishnet gloves with a sleeveless Chinese tang shirt that was red with gold trim. With a pair black Anbu pants and black ninja sandals. Check bio for pic. Father, you wanted to see me? She asked in an indifferent voice. You know you could call me Tusan in private. He said, hoping to get a response from his daughter that wasn't negative. Yes, I know, but why would I call you that when I haven't in almost 6 years? She waited to see how he would respond, but after no response for 30 seconds she continued. What do you want, father? Minato, who sighed and just looked at her. Ever since she old enough to understand what she had in her and in her brother, she had been distant from he and Kushina. Claiming that Naruto wasn't a beast and that he was their son. Of course they tried to show her that he was a beast, but she was stubborn in her belief. So different beliefs led to arguments and arguments led to distance. Thank the gods that she didn't hate them. Though she did move out at the age of 15, which was too early in their eyes, but by technicality she was an adult and could make her own decisions. Actually yes, I need you to escort a diplomat around the village. He is from a country in the west. This got her attention. You mean Suna? She questioned. No, from what we heard, the diplomat is from a country that borders Suna and is out of the elemental nations. He stopped to show a letter that was in a drawer. We received a letter from the country saying that they have gotten out of a long war and are opening their boards to all countries in the west and here in the elemental nations for games of sorts. They call it an Olympics. They're sending this diplomat to all the countries in the elemental nations in hopes to convince us to come. I've heard that most if not all the villages are going and are even sending competitors. Mito looked at her father confused. Okay, I understand the seeing the village part, but why tell me all this other stuff? That's because I want you to be a competitor in one of the events that they're going to offer. It would look good if the leader's child were to compete in it. I will also have others from your age group be participating as well as those that are older. What kind of events are there? If I'm going to compete, I'd at least like to choose the one I do. Minato rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Well, we don't know what kind of events there are yet, but as soon as we know I'll let you know. Mito could only shake her head. Alright, but as so she was stopped as his secretary entered and explained that the gate guard stopped a group that she believes are the diplomats that he mentioned earlier to her. Minato sighed. We can continue this later, but for now meet with them. See what they're like and if they're friendly. Mito nodded and then proceeded to walk out. Gods have mercy on us that they're peaceful were the last thoughts before he left to gather the council to meet the diplomats. Diplomats. As Mito walked towards the gates she saw a strange sight before her. It was a group of 5 people. 2 wearing formal-looking clothes while the other 3 wore servant uniforms. Sir, I'm sorry we can't let you in yet. We have been ordered to wait for an escort for your group. Oh, pretty please. Why can you just let us in? We'll be good boys. Said a teen boy. Always, shut it already. Almost all the villages were the same. What makes you think this one would be any different? Now just shut up already. Oh, you're so mean to me, Seal. Remember I almost got us into that sand village when I put my charms on that one girl. Oh, and her flinging you into the sand with her fan really meant that she loved you. Both stopped arguing as both had their ears pulled on by what looked to be a maid with tan skin, straight lavender hair, and a maid uniform that was indigo. Both of you, would you please show some dignity? We are meeting others from a different county. I was expecting this out of Alois, but you sail. I'll just say that I'm disappointed in the both of you, but I am more upset with you too. She said looking toward the two other servants. Both being very tall and handsome with fair complexions and wearing black butler suits with one wearing glasses. The one named Seal looked to be 16 and had dark navy blue hair with the same colored eye on the left side, but the right was covered with a black eye patch. He was only a little taller than herself, standing roughly 5'6" with a black long coat, while under he wore a black waistcoat and wore black pants. The other one that was arguing with him, Alois, looked to be also 16, had platinum blonde hair with baby blue eyes, and stood about 5'8". He wore something similar to the now named Seal. He had a purple long coat with a dark green waistcoat underneath. He also wore long pants with knee-high heels. The two butlers that had been called out only looked at the woman and gave a slight shrug with barely noticeable smiles. Though the one without glasses spoke first. "Hannah, they're older and I can't see why they can't handle themselves." The now named Hannah gave a deadpan stare at the butler who talked. "You out of all people are telling me this, and don't you even speak Claudius, you're the same way as Sebastian. I think you two just like to see them get in trouble with me." It was silent for a moment before the one named Sebastian replied in a suave way. "I wouldn't lie and say it's not amusing to watch. I was right, you always did leave when she would come around when me and Alois argued. By Lord, I would never do such a thing to you. It is my job to protect you and serve you till the end of time," Sebastian said as he got down on one knee. This also got the one named Claudius to kneel in front of Alois. "As is my duty to serve you, my highness, till the end of time," he said in a dull way. This was the scene that Mito had walked into. Katetsu, Izumo. "Oh, are these the ones claiming to be diplomats?" "Yeah," was Izumo's reply. "Well, my father said that I'm to show them around the village. So let them in and I'll take them off your hands." "Okay, Mito, but if they cause any trouble we're pointing the finger at you." "It's alright." She then looked at the group that looked to recover from whatever they were doing. "Alright, let's go. I'll be showing you around the village." At that moment the one named Alois walked up to her and took her hand, surprising her. "What a beautiful lady you are. What is thy name, madam?" Mito quickly pulled her hand back and blushed from the embarrassment. Not many of the boys she grew up with had the balls to do what the 16-year-old did, but that's probably because they don't know who she was or who her parents were. "I'm Mito Uzumaki," was her calm reply. "Uzumaki? I've heard that name before. Oh, are you a member of the Uzumaki clan I've heard so much about?" Alois asked. This confused Mito. How did two foreign diplomats from a country that had had no relations with the elemental nations know of the almost extinct clan? Hell, she didn't even know it was a clan until a few years ago when her mother told her about where she grew up. "Yeah, but how do you even know of that clan? They've been almost extinct for years now. How would you know of them?" Sale was the one to speak this time. "You could say that we have an Uzumaki in the west and he can claim to be one, but for personal reasons chose to change his name." "Oh, well, that's slightly disappointing to hear, but hey, maybe if my village agrees to go to your Olympics." "Yes, Olympics. I could meet him. I don't know if he would want to. He doesn't like the name very much from what he's told us. So he might not agree," said Alois. "Oh, that sucks," she said sadly, thinking she could have possibly met another person from her clan, but she quickly pushed those thoughts to the back of her head. "Well, let's get this tour started." Council meeting chambers. "So are we in agreement that we'll be participating?" Almost all of the hands of the Konoha Council, civilian and ninja, raised their hands in agreement with the exception of the elders. They had wanted to send people to watch the games, but not compete in them. They wanted to see what this country could do. Minato had been debating with the council about the games and if they were going to participate or not before the diplomats were even summoned. The letter was the real invitation, but the diplomats were the representatives that could be asked all questions. "Okay, Anbu. Have the diplomats escorted here." "Minato, I hope you know what you're doing," stated Danzo. "Because we the elders still believe that you shouldn't send competitors, let alone our Jinchuriki." I and Harumo also agree with Danzo. "We should wait before we send our most powerful ninja," the other elder said. "None of you should worry. They just recently got out of a war and from what I was able to get from the letter is that it was no more than a little more than a year ago that it ended. If it were any sort of trap or grab for power we could crush them almost instantly, and that's just us. They'll have the other major villages there to worry about," was Minato's reply. "I bet that their military isn't even that stable in that short amount of time. Hell, I'd bet even the Hyuga could beat them," stated the matriarch of the Inyazuka clan Tsume with a smile. A tick mark appeared on the Hyuga patriarch Hiashi. "Are you saying what I think you are, Inyazuka?" "Oh, whatever could you mean, Hiashi?" was Tsume's sarcastic reply. Minato only sighed and shook his head. This was normal with the clans, he never minded a bit of friendly competition in the council, but sometimes it just wasn't appropriate like now. He was about to stop them, but his words died in his throat as he heard the door open and a calm and almost mocking voice spoke. "I would love to see you both try. It is only a friendly competition between our countries. We wouldn't mind allowing a few clan leaders, Jinchuriki or even Kages participate. Hell, one of the Kages are competing in our Olympics. I couldn't tell you which event for privacy reasons, but they are competing all the same," said a teenager with navy blue hair. "And you are?" questioned the Hyuga clan head. This time a teenager with platinum blonde hair answered. "Oh, forgive us. We didn't introduce ourselves." The boy with blonde hair turned to another one of the people that entered. "Shall I do the honors or would you like to?" "Go ahead. I know you want to, and if I don't let you, I know you'll complain later," was the blue-haired teenager's reply. The blonde then bowed in a way they haven't seen before. Putting one foot forward and one arm around the back while the other was placed right in front of the boy's stomach. "I am Alois Trancy, and this one right next to me is Seal Phantomhev. We are the twin kings of the underworld and the diplomats sent to discuss the games. We will also be hosting the games." The Hyuga paled slightly. "Oh, my apologies, I just didn't think you'd be so young." "Yes, we get that a lot, it's alright. No harm done," said the now named Alois in an almost too cheery way. "If I may ask, Mr. Trancy, who are the ones standing behind you?" asked a curious Akimichi. "Oh, they are our servants." Alois then looked at the three. "You may introduce yourselves," he stated. The first to introduce himself was a man named Sebastian, the second was Claudius, and the last was Hannah. All the occupants were awed by the beauty of the three servants. Even the ever-stoic Hiashi's cheeks flushed a bit at the sight of Hannah. "Now I going to skip the introduction of the games. Every other village just wanted to know the events that will be there. So here is a list of the events that will be there. I will give you a few moments to look over it and then answer some questions," said Sale. It was quiet as Minato looked at the letter, but the silence was interrupted by Minato himself. Am I reading these last two right? They're completely different from the others," Minato questioned. The council members only looked on in confusion. What could it be that was so bad? At that, Seal sighed. The last one actually is correct, but the one before that, yes, we know it's strange and trust me, that one wasn't by choice. Even our emperor was a bit upset because he has to participate," Seal answered him. "Who even came up with this idea, and what do you mean he has to participate?" asked Minato. "It was drawn at random. We couldn't come up with the final ones, so we had our council draw from a collection of ideas. This idea was put in by a woman named Viscounta Druid, too. She said something about how the beauty of humans should be something to never hide. Whatever that means, but the reason the emperor is in this one is because if he didn't compete, Viscounta would have asked his wives to compete in a reverse event, and if that were to happen, let's just say that it wouldn't be pretty. The emperor's wives are friendly with each other. Hell, you'd think they're sisters, but when an opportunity to one-up the other arises, let's just say they don't hesitate often. Unless he himself stops them, but I don't think that they'll stop this time even if asked." "I see, so only males are allowed to compete in it?" asked Minato. "Yep," Alois answered. "If I may ask, is there actually anybody from the nations competing in this specific event?" "Actually, there are a few from what we were able to get before leaving the other villages," answered Sale. Minato sighed before speaking. "Okay, well, you're more than welcome to stay in the village until we can." Minato was stopped when Seal spoke. "I'm afraid that we won't be staying. Our time here has been over the time permitted. The only reason we're still here is because our emperor asked us to visit every major and a few small villages before returning, and because of that we will be leaving when this meeting is over," Sale cut in. "We ask that you send your acceptance to Suna, and also how many will be competing," Alois continued. Danzo spoke up with narrowed eyes. "Why Suna?" "We ask Suna because they have messenger birds that know their way to our capital. They are quite friendly and we have been trading with them since the end of our war," answered Sale with a smile that almost seemed mocking. "Now with it we would like to take our leave." "Alright, then I'll have my daughter escort you out of the village." And with a nod from Alois and Seal them left. Once they left and the doors closed, Danzo spoke. "I don't like that they're friendly with Suna before us. Also with the fact that they choose to visit us last and not stay here. I would keep an eye out for them when we go to compete since you all decided. I can understand being friendly with other countries before us, but I don't understand the other reasons, you old bat," was Tsume's response. "It can mean that they didn't want to come here. Meaning that they don't see us in a good light. Why? I don't know, but for once I might agree with Danzo that we should be wary of them," agreed Shibi of the Aburami clan. "I as well, but for a different reason." Hiashi then looked at Minato. None of them had a single ounce of chakra in their bodies. Seal and Alois. Well, I hope that you had a decent time here, even though you didn't spend much time here," said Mito. "It was alright, but if our counties continue this friendship we must eat together at that ramen shop you took us to," was Alois's reply. At that Mito smiled, but then her face became sad and looked like she was in deep thought as they arrived at the gates. Could I ask the both of you something?" asked Mito in a sad tone, all the previous joy leaving her face. They stopped at the gates when they saw her and heard her depressed voice. Seal and Alois shared a look before Sale answering. "Yes, what is it?" Have you heard or met anyone by the name of?" Mito stopped, hesitating as if the next question would cause her pain. "Have you heard the name Naruto Namikaze anywhere in the West?" Sale answered after taking time to think, judging by the way his body stood. "I'm sorry, we haven't. But if we do I'll be sure to tell you at the games," he answered her. "Oh, okay then. It was nice meeting you," she said, still showing her sadness in the tone of her voice, and with that they left the village hidden in the leaves. "So do you think that Naruto will be happy that his twin still loves him and misses him?" asked Alois as they got farther from the village. "I can't say with certainty, but I think he will. Though there's one I do suggest we watch out for. At least out of the council," Sale answered. "Oh, so you think so too, don't you? The man that was all bandaged up." "Yes, him, he seems off and I know Sebastian felt it. Same with Hannah and Claudius." "Yes, my lord. I felt something strange about him, but it was more his soul that was off," answered Sebastian. "Yes, his soul was as black as the night. Almost as bad as the one that set the world back to the Stone Age so many years ago," continued Claudius in his dull tone. "Agreed," Hannah answered. "Do you think the Naruto would let us have his soul if we asked nicely?" asked Alois. "Maybe. That is unless the man does something to him first, but even then he just may give it you too. If he's in a good mood," Sale said, not showing any sign that he cared. "Oh, I hope he does. I love the souls that squirms before I eat." "I still don't know how your highness developed the appetite for the foul ones," Claudia said out loud. "Oh, you can thank Hannah. She gave me my first meal like that," Alois said in a cheerful voice. West. Emperor's Council Room, nighttime. As Seal and Alois made their way back, we find our favorite emperor sitting in a chair at a table in the shape of a circle with 5 other chairs, but with 4 of the 5 being filled. These people were his kings and queens and his council. Each in their own right a king or queen among men and women, and because of that, each person at the table had every right to sit there. You guys can look these people up for what they look like. None are hard to find except one, which is the one not here but will show up later in story. Names of series will be at bottom. "I don't see anything wrong with it, except for that event Visconti chose," said a gruff voice that came from a man wearing a white tunic. "Oh, lighten up, Leonidas, it's not like you're competing in it. The only people that are competing in this room is our dear emperor and our one-eyed king. Of course it's not by choice, but still," said a voice. "Or, you're just saying that because there's no female version of this event. Besides, Lelich is competing too," Kaneki said in a dull tone. At that, every person in the room turned their head to the emperor's hand. A title bestowed on those that assist the emperor with most things and is the most trusted advisor. The man standing next to the emperor's side. "Yes, I will be competing in this, but the only reason is because the witch forced me." "Oh, CC isn't a witch. She's the nicest person I know, and whenever I see her we always go out to eat that new food." "Oh, what is it called again, Lelich?" Cora asked. "You mean pizza?" he said with a sigh. "Yeah, that's the one, it is so good. Didn't you say it was super popular like over 100 years ago or something like that?" "Well, it wasn't 100 years ago, it was more like 1,500 years ago was it popular." "Huh, I always forget like you're a million years old," Cora said with a thoughtful face before it turned at a look of curiosity. "You and CC gotta tell me your secret. Is it some mysterious elixir or do you bath as some type of spirit water?" Naruto sighed with a smile on his face. This is how his meeting always ended with his council of kings and queens, as Cora called them. It was sometimes hard to believe that these were the men and women he fought side by side with. What with all their silliness shown off the battlefield. His smile only widened as he watched Cora, queen of the elemental states, which were a group of territories ruled by her under his name. And one of the strongest women besides his wives, argue with his lanky and weak advisor about which food was the best. He also saw his other 3 kings laughing or chuckling at the scene before them, but what he saw in the eyes of each person was what he loved. He saw in every eye a sense of calm, peace and happiness. Emotions that by all logic and reason shouldn't be there considering everyone's past. Each enduring a horror that none should go through, all being similar in ways they would have never guessed. Kaneki, the one-eyed king, was the most similar to him. Being forced with a burden that they did not ask for. He was born from wedlock between a ghoul woman and human man. Lost his mother after she was killed by his father right in front of him. Hunted for being a ghoul and disliked by the ghoul community. He went to find his uncle and met his cousin Ito. There he was raised and later met Naruto. When he still lived with Kiritsugu Amiya. Everything was fine until he was taken by a rival ghoul gang and was tortured at the age of 17. He later escaped and then hunted the leader of the ghoul gang that had kidnapped and tortured him, the White Suits, for 2 years. He then killed and took over the origination. After that he returned home to find out that his uncle died and that his cousin took over their organization named Ajiri and just started fighting alongside Naruto. Horror the Avatar was born to a poor family in a realm that was divided into states, also known as elemental states. Each state held a race of humans that could control and bend the elements to their will, but like all of them in the room she was different. She had the ability to bend all the elements and some sub-elements, and because of that, all the states went after her to use her as a weapon in the hopes that their state would rule the others, though that never happened. Her parents were later killed because she didn't cooperate, and because of that she went on a rampage at the age of 18. She then started a rebellion that was made up of all types of bender and fought against the states. She led them for 4 years and ended up conquering 4 of the 5 states. She ended up in a standstill, not gaining or losing any ground until she was offered help by Naruto. Ichigo is from a clan known as the Shiny, the one that Naruto's wife, Retsuo Nohana, was from. It was a clan that was not from this dimension but worshipped the same death god. He was born with an excessive amount of Ryatsu or spirit energy, which was not chakra. Though he was also born with another abnormality. For some reason he had the ability to use the power of hollows, which are an extinct race of demons. This abnormality made him the center of attention for many years that ranged from good to bad. He was seen as a freak and abomination. Until he was later used as a weapon in a war long forgotten by the current age of men, the 300-year Blood War. He fought on the front lines as a living weapon against a race known as the Quincy. Near the end of the war their enemies made a big move that caused the death of their highest generals. Only leaving his wife Retsu and another general named Byakuya alive. The brother to Ichigo's future wife Rukia. After the Quincy's attack, Ichigo, fed up and on the brink of losing the war and losing his sanity, lead an attack on the Quincy's where he would defeat the Quincy's and be crowned the Soul King. He then moved his clan and the people of the other dimension to this world, or world of the living as he called it, about 45 years ago, and built the city and realm that he now rules under Naruto named Sirite. He would later enter the war and follow Naruto, believing that he could end the constant war in the West. Though it also helped Naruto that Unohana took an interest in him before he started his conquest. Which meant a lot considering the last person she was interested in was a man named Kenpachi Zaraki, who was supposedly going to surpass her, but ended up dying in the Blood War. The last of them among them was Leonidas, the king of Sparta. Leo, as some called him, grew up in a city that was bred for war. Where at birth they decided whether or not you lived depending on how healthy they were. If they weren't healthy they would throw the newborn off a cliff that was near the city, but if they were torn away from their family at the age of 7 to begin their grueling training. They would have the children fend for themselves and encourage Sealing to feed themselves. They would train them until they could not stand. Though there was a difference in how Leo was treated, for he was the son of their current king, and because of that he was expected more from. So much more that his father actually tied him up and took him to a nearby mountain range to leave him and make his way back home. On the way back he encountered wolves and other predators. While having to deal with the cold of the mountains, but there was one predator that hunted him relentlessly. The predator was a black dire wolf that had supposedly been causing trouble for nearby villages. Leo tried to track the beast but had no success. Until he was close to the base of the mountain and near the edge of the forest that surrounded it. There the beast appeared before him and challenged him. Leo had won and then returned home wearing its hide as a cloak and its skull as a mask and trophy. When he arrived home, he walked into the palace and challenged his father for the throne, and almost without effort, he slew him and took his seat on the throne at the age of 15. 15 years later though Naruto would come along and would face him in single combat, beat him and earn the respect of Leo. Thus why Leo joined Naruto in his mission to conquer the West. These were the stories of the men and women that sat with him. Men and women that bled and cried with him. He would trust them with his life if he had to, and they would too, with anyone else in the room. These were the people that changed his life and helped him change the world around him. Oh, would you look at the time? It's already past midnight. Ichigo pointed out. Really? Asked Leo. Yes. Answered Kaneki. Then I must be off to bed. I must wake early to get back to Sparta. I also have to leave early. Ichigo said. He then stood and watched everyone else do the same. Alright then, this concludes the end of the final meeting before the games. The games will be in 1 month. Lelich said and then looked to Naruto. Naruto opened a golden ripple and stuck his hand in only to pull out a golden pitcher of wine and then 6 cups. He then poured wine into each and gave each person a cup. He raised a cup and in a loud voice said. To you my kings and queen, I drink, and to the West. May we prosper as people and as a country. The Emperor and the West, was the response he received before they all downed the wine and slapped their cups down onto the table. "Naruto, calm down," said a soothing voice that came from Kurumi as she sat on the armrest of his throne. "I am calm, Rumi. I don't know what you're talking about." "Appa Den, why is your leg shaking so much?" Nell said with an innocent smile. "That's because Papa is nervous, little one," answered Retsu as she walked in from another room to see Naruto sitting on his throne with Nell on his lap and Kurumi on the armrest, each dressed in formal clothes. Naruto wore a black kimono that had a thin white stripe design, with the stripes going up and down the kimono, while Kurumi wore a red loose-fitting kimono that was designed with small white flowers and showed off a bit too much of her bust for Retsu's liking. Finally, Nell wore a teal kimono with blue cornflower flower designs and all the while having her cracked skull mask on her little head. Naruto sighed. "I'm not nervous." But his slightly shaky leg gave him away. Kurumi hugged him from where she sat. "Naruto, it's alright to be a bit nervous. This is the first time that you'll be seeing anyone from the village. Just remember that we will always be with you. Please, my love. Have no fear, we will support you just as we always have," Retsu continued. This made Naruto smile. "I don't know what I'd do without you two." And it was the truth. He was basically inviting his family that hated him into his country and home. Without these two women, and the third that was here when she could be, he would be a nervous wreck. That was something that would have put no image of a strong and powerful leader that was needed in front of the Kages and visitors he was about to have. If he wanted to make sure that his people didn't seem like pushovers. "What about me, Papa?" Nell questioned as she turned around on his lap and stood on his legs so that she was even with his face. "What would you do without me?" "Oh, baby girl. I couldn't imagine what life would be like without you. Papa would get sad and so would both your mothers. I think we'd all die because we would miss you so much." He then grabbed her head with his free hand while the other was trapped between him and Kurumi's hug and pulled her head close so that he could kiss her forehead. Nell smiled and hugged her father and stayed like that for a few seconds before she let go. "Papa, are we still going to go to the festival today?" "Yeah, we are, but first we're going to meet up with Uncle Ken and Ichigo and Auntie Taka and Rukia at the pastry man's store." "Really? That means we'll see Kuro and Shiro." "Yep, but how are we supposed to leave when you're still on my lap?" he asked with a slight chuckle. At that, Nell blushed from embarrassment and climbed off her father's lap. This also got Kurumi to let go and get off the armrest so that they could leave the palace. As the four walked to the door, they were stopped by a voice. "My lord, everything is taken care of. I asked to be excused for the day if that would be alright." "Butler, I told you already that you don't have to call me lord or anything, and I told you today you had the day off," Naruto said with a sigh. Butler was a young man around the age of 17 who had a thin but lean build and was around the height of 5'8". He had long black hair that was pulled into a short ponytail. He had a pale skin tone with gray eyes and wore a dark gray dress shirt with a black dress vest over it and a red tie with normal dress pants. "If I couldn't finish today's workload before my own free time, what kind of butler would I be?" The three adults could only give a deadpan stare at his words, with only Retsu answering finally. "Sebastian has been a very good influence on you," she said with a smile. Naruto sighed. "Yes, Walter, you can take the day off." Then Naruto smirked. "Just enjoy yourself and say hi to Ichika for me. Tell her that her dear uncle misses her so much." At that comment, Walter blushed. What do you mean? I know of no such woman." "Oh? Then why, when the Kurosakis come to visit, do you run off when you're finished with your work or you request to take off?" Naruto watched as his butler began to slightly squirm under his gaze. While trying to explain that he had important business on those days, but Naruto, he saved him when he raised a hand motioning him stop. "Walter. I do not care how you spend your off time or who you choose to spend it with. All I ask is that you do not let Ichigo or Rukia find out, because the moment they do, I can promise you this, that either A, you will suffer untold pain at the hands of Rukia, or B, I will have to bury my head butler if Ichigo finds out first." At that, the young butler paled and shook a little because the people that knew the Soul King personally knew that he was very protective of his daughter. Though he was eased only a little after the next thing his master said. "Though you shouldn't have to worry. Ichigo can be an airhead sometimes." "Oi, who you calling an airhead?" At the sound of the newcomer's voice, Naruto and his butler stiffened while Naruto's wives placed a hand above their mouths, trying to keep in their laughter while Nell looked on confused. "And no one Ichigo. I was just talking about this performer I once met that acted like an airhead." "Oh really, what was the name of this performer?" asked a slightly ticked off Ichigo. As he tried to think of a name to save himself. Ichigo's wife, Rukia, stopped her giggling and saved him. The woman was short in stature at around 4'8" with black hair that went down to the middle of her back and framed her face. She wore a white kimono that was so white It looked as if the silk were actual snow, and to complete her dress, she had a white hairpiece that looked like icicles on the side of her head. Ichigo, I think they're talking about that chaplain performer that's recently become a big hit. She said with a smile. Charla. Dog eye dat falls over a lot. You mean that guy? Nell yelled in excitement, oblivious to the fact that her speaking saved her father and Butler. Yup. The very one. Naruto says with a nervous laugh. Oh, he's so funny. I like him. Nell said again with a grin on her face. Though, that grin soon turned into laughter as a young woman appeared behind her and scooped her up into her arms. The young woman's name was Ichika, daughter of Ichigo and Rukia. The young woman stood at a middle height between her parents at around 5'4" with purple eyes. She had her orange hair bound into a high spiky ponytail at her back and wore a white kimono with a red spider lily pattern. Oh, how long has it been since I last saw you, my little goddaughter? Nell giggled and laughed as the young woman tickled her while she held her. Stop, Sika. I can't breathe. She managed to get out as she again started to laugh from the tickling onslaught. Oh no you don't. This is payback for last time. You changed my shampoo to green hair dye last time you were over. She said in a playful yet slightly angry tone as she continued the tickling. Do you know how long it took to get that out of my hair? This time she stopped in her tickling to look at her goddaughter. Waiting for an answer. While Nell tried to regain her breath. A day? She asked innocently while looking away. Nell received no answer. So, she decided to look up at her godmother's face. What she saw scared her. Her godmother's upper face was shadowed with hair that was not there. Only allowing two wide orbs that were eyes to be seen and a smile that stretched from one side to the other, allowing her face to have a deranging looking smile. The face terrified Nell and even unnerved the adults a bit. For a week. My hair was green for a week. A week. So, for that I'm not going to stop tickling you until you promise to stop playing pranks on me. So she continued her tickling onslaught again. Okay. I promise no more pranks. Nell yelled while panting. Trying to regain her breath from her godmother's tickling attack. You promise? Ichika asked again. Yes. Humph, I'm going to hold you to that little missy. She said and put Nell down. When Nell was put down she rushed to her father's legs and hid behind them as she poked her head out from behind him to see if her godmother gave chase or not, and to her relief she didn't. The adults and others there could only laugh as it happened before. Naruto then spoke as they quieted down. So why are you guys here? I thought I said we'd meet you at the bakery. Well, we were waiting, but Ichika started to get impatient and said that she was going to walk ahead, but we decided we'd join her, and now we're here. Ichigo answered. Why? Don't want us here early? Think I'll beat you at all the stalls. First off. No, I was just wondering that's all, and second you don't have a chance at beating me. Naruto said in a mocking tone. He then turned around, grabbed Nell and placed her on his shoulders. Right baby girl? Yeah. Let's beat Uncle Ichigo and eat lots of food. Yelled the small child. The two men then ran off to engage in an ultimate stall battle. Leaving their wives behind along with Ichigo's daughter and Naruto's butler. I swear he's going to be the death of me. Rukia said with a small smile on her face. As Naruto and Nell will be ours. I agree. Retsu agreed. Should we follow? The three wives then each took up a thinking stance. Sure, why not? Could be funny to watch. Kurumi said with a shrug of her shoulders and began to walk after them at a leisurely pace with the other two following her. Well, that was interesting. Ichika said as she and the butler were the only ones left at the entrance to the palace. Quite. So, what you say we try some of the stalls before later tonight? She said with a slight purr. I was just about to ask the same. Was his confident reply, and with that they linked arms and walked towards the festival. Later that night with Mito. I know it was going to be big, but this is ridiculous. This has to be bigger than Konoha and Kiri combined. You think so? I'm not quite sure. What do you think? If I were to guess two would be about that size if only a little smaller. This was the talk that Mito heard from both Kiri and Konoha competitors as they got closer to the gates of the capital known as Babylon. Each sizing the city up from where they were. It was rare to see two villages that always had a slightly rocky relationship work together, but desperate times called for desperate measures. They both had happened upon each other shortly after they had broken their camp this morning. The groups were slightly on edge within the other's presence, but who could blame them? Konoha had denied support to the rebels during their civil war, but that hadn't been the smartest move because a few years later the civil war ended with the rebels on top, which almost crippled any trade between the two villages. Mito understood how they thought and accepted it, though she knew that the civilian council hadn't taken it lightly. The council wanted to swoop in and make a grab for power, but were only stopped by the ninja council and her father. Had her father and the others let the civilian council gotten what they wanted, Then there would have been another world war for sure, and that was something no one wanted. So, it wasn't surprising that it was a little tense at first. Though her father and the Mizukage, whose name she learned was Mei, quickly put a stop to any possible fighting, very fast. They both realized that they were in a foreign country that they knew nothing about. No one had intel or information to share or use to give themselves an advantage. Thus, the two Kages realized that they needed to form some sort of alignment to keep their competitors alive and uninjured. This also allowed for the two villages, to a lesser degree, form some sort of bond to help for future treaties. As they approached the gates they noticed that a mass group of people had just entered the city and from what everyone could see it was Suna. Which meant to Mito that her friend Gaara, who had become their Kazekage, was there with his brother and sister. Her and Gaara met when her father hosted the Chunin examens in their village. He was a very quiet person and still is to those he doesn't know personally. Though even if you do know him personally he was still a quiet person, but that was another matter. They had met before the first event. They weren't friends right off the bat, but as the tournament went on and as both made it to the final levels, they began to talk, if only slightly, and by the last event they had an acquaintance-level relationship. It wasn't till 3 years later, after she returned from a 3-year training trip with her godfather, was she able to call Gaara a friend. When she was sent to Suna for a diplomatic mission that was to help secure trade for her village with their new Kazekage. Which happened to be him. As the Suna group moved on she caught a glimpse of Gaara looking back at her and only nodding when he realized she saw him. This was to show that he acknowledged she was here and was a way to greet her from afar. She then watched as the two Kages and everyone else began to follow the Suna group until they were stopped by two people. The first was a handsome young man that appeared to be in his early 20s and stood around 5'8". He had short messy purple hair that bordered on black and was pulled into a short ponytail. He had blue eyes that almost seemed to glow with the fading sunlight and had very light skin. He also wore a plain black kimono with black sandals. The second was a young girl that was petite with pale skin and straight black hair that was chin length. She had dark purple eyes similar to her mother's and wore a yukata that was white and had a sash that was red. "Halt. Speak your names," said the young man. She watched as her father and the Mizukage began to introduce themselves and their respective groups. This got her to look over her own group. The group consisted of many faces that she was familiar with. Ranging from the classmates that she grew up with which were known as the Konoha 12, and the senseis that taught them, including her second sensei Jiraiya. Some of both the civil and shinobi council, a few normal Anbu and undercover Anbu and two of the elders. Them being Danzo and Hamura. Mito looked at the guards. This proves that they have strong warriors here. Spoke her friend and squadmate, Sasuke Uchiha, into her ear from behind her. This made her turn to the guards. Both seemed and didn't seem to be on guard. The man held the look of a trained killer in his eyes, but possessed no weapons. The girl seemed aloof with the smile that she possessed, but they could quickly tell that she was at least trained in some sort of art because no normal girl moved with such grace and fluidity. "I am Minato Namikaze, Hokage of the village hidden in the leaves. I am Mei Terumi, Mizukage of the village hidden in the mist. We are both here for the Olympics that are to take place here." The young man looked over the group before speaking. "Nora, do you have the list for Konoha and Kiri?" The small girl, now named Nora, handed 2 scrolls from the collection under her arm. "Yado, they seem to have the right amount of people from what I can tell," she said in a soft voice that seemed a bit dull. "Yes, I can see that, but it's always good to make sure," replied the now named Yado. He then began counting heads and comparing some face for the Kiri group from the back to the front, where Mei stood. "Please wait right here as I go over the Konoha group," he said in a calm but demanding voice. "That will be fine," was Mei's reply. He then gave the scroll back to the small girl and opened the next scroll, looking over the names and comparing faces. Everything was fine until Yado stopped in front of Minato-sensei Jiraiya. "You have one more than you had put down. Why is that?" He was going to stay at the village for a mission, but he ended up coming home earlier than expected and asked to come. He replied with a neutral tone. "Will there be a problem?" "Yes, actually. We were informed that only a certain amount were supposed to enter. You exceed that by 1. Therefore. Just let him in, Yado. It's only 1. Spoke a familiar voice. Both groups looked past Yado and Nora at a finely dressed Alois Trancy and Seal Fantomhev. They both had their respective butlers with them, but Seal had another person with him. One that none had seen with him when he had visited their villages. It was young woman that seemed to have clanged to his arm. She looked to be around 17 and stood around 5'2". She had soft pale skin and golden eyes that resembled a lioness. She had jet black hair that was arranged in long braids and cat ear-like buns with 2 blood-red peony, flower type 1 for each side of her head. She wore a navy blue loose-fitting kimono with small beige butterfly designs that went down to her feet but seemed to part around her thighs, leaving them in full view for all to see. Most of the men blushed, if only a little, at the sight of the woman, and even a few women did as well, but Alois brought them out of their momentary shock of the woman. "I'd watch it if I were you." Seal has always been a bit overprotective of the girl on his arm, even though she doesn't need it, he mumbled the last part, but most hurt him. "Alois, if anything happens because of this man then you will be the first one I point to," Yato stated in a calm but unnerving voice. This got the blonde to smile slightly. "Oh, I dare you to tell him if something goes amiss. Me and the Emperor haven't had a good spar in a long time, so I welcome it." He finished as a dark aura started to befall him, making most there feel as if they were bugs and he a giant readying to smash them. It also didn't help that his smile stretched to that of an evil and insane grin. The aura slowly started to make some there feel as if they were choking, and even making others feel slightly faint, but that all disappeared in an instant. As the happy playful smile reappeared on his face. All the while Seal and those with him watched on with amused faces. He then turned to face the group of competitors. "Alright then, Yato and Nora will be taking you to your hotels or compounds depending on preference as asked in the letter. I ask that you please follow all the rules of the city and any other rules that will be instated by these two," he said pointing to Yato and Nora. "So, other than that I ask that you enjoy the festival. It will last 3 days and will be leading off the Olympics. Now I believe that is all. Good day to you." He then turned to leave and Seal made to follow but was stopped by the woman that clung to his arm. She pulled him closer and whispered something into his ear. He then turned back to the group. "Ran Mao reminded me that there will be a civilian Olympics starting tomorrow if you do not wish to spend all your time at the festival." He then turned with Ran Mao still attached to his arm and walked to catch up with Alois. "You are lucky that Alois was here to allow you to enter the city, because if he wasn't I would have left the man outside the city. Please know that it is not a grudge or malice towards you, but my job that makes me do this. I do not want personnel that we know nothing about to enter our capital and cause problems." Mito commended the man's sense of duty because she knew that sometimes there was no other way to act when it interfered with your job. Especially when it came to the safety of a city. She was also sometimes put into similar positions when on a mission where she had to choose. "Now Kiri, I ask that you follow me and I ask that Konoha follow Nora. We will be leading you to your temporary residence." Mito saw her father nod and began to walk, following the small girl. "Please follow me," Nora said in a sweet voice. "You will be staying in one of our guest compounds." As they walked into the city they saw that the festival that Alois talked about was in full swing. The festival was full of laughter and cheers of joy. Children ran around from stall to stall with parents talking and following behind them. Cheers from what looked like bars and other restaurants that were further down and along the buildings. All in all, the city was in a happy and joyous mood that left even them, newcomers and foreigners, wanting to join in on the fun that the festival had to offer. This is normally the market district. This is where the festival will be for the most part. There will be a more adult festival in the district over on the last day before the Olympics, and the civilian Olympics will be held in the same district tomorrow and the day after if you why. At that moment Nora was interrupted as a small green child ran into her. "Oomph, watch Nora. Help. Hide me." The girl then ran behind her allowing her to be hidden from the way she came. The competitors looked at the girl that faced them, trying to hide from whoever was chasing her. The girl then noticed that she had an audience in front of her and decided smile and wave at her audience. She then made a shushing motion to the group, making the female competitors gush to themselves about how cute she was and some of the males chuckle at her antics. Some even waved back discreetly, not wanting to be the one to reveal the cute little girl. Just then the group saw 2 more girls walk onto the scene. Both dressed in kimonos, one with white and black trim, while the other had a black and white trim on. With puzzled and playful looks. Each one looking for what everyone assumed was the green-haired girl. They then noticed their guide and walked closer. "Hey Nora," they said at the same time. "Hello Shiro, hello Kuro. How are you both?" she said with a smile. "We're both fine." They guessed because of the white hair, Shiro. Kuro spoke up then. "Nora, have you seen Nell? We were playing hide and seek with mom and dad, they found us so we just have to find Nell." Nora feigned a thinking pose. As if thinking extremely hard on whether she saw the girl before answering. "I'm sorry you too, but I have," but she never finished because a calm but playful voice spoke before she could finish. "Nell, I see your feet poking out from the side of Nora's yukata." This got the now named Nell to pout cutely. "Uncle Ken, I thought I was your favorite niece." The man that had spotted the girl chuckled slightly and walked towards them. A few of the younger female competitors in the group blushed slightly from the side of the man. The man had a very handsome face and what the open part of the kimono plain black showed had a lean but muscular build. He had pale skin and snow-white hair and had steel gray eyes. "Nell, you're my only niece," he said with a deadpan stare but quickly lightened up. "Now let's go, your father is waiting for you." He said that they're going to stop at the last stall for some sweets before they head back home. But Da-san just said. This time a woman spoke up. When the group saw her there were several blushes. The woman looked very young and beautiful. With her lightly tanned almost pale skin, sickly black hair and blue sapphire eyes. To add to her beauty, she wore a plain black kimono trimmed with white that hugged her body, allowing her curves to be seen if you looked closely. "Hamanel, your father, Kurumi, the Kurosakis and Kanekis are waiting for you," said the silky voice of the woman. "But mama, I still want to play with Shai and Kunel," whined cutely. "Nell, don't worry about that. They're coming by to stay a little." "Really?" she asked excitedly to the man she named Ken. "Yes, Nell. We'll be staying for a bit." "Yay!" she shouted and jumped up and down. She then stopped and grabbed the two girls by the hand before running off. "Shai, Ku, come on, let's go." Everyone there smiled. Even the ever-stoic Aburami Shino had the hint of a smile on his face if you were to see past his hood. The woman that was there then tuned to the group of people. "I'm sorry about that. My daughter can be a handful sometimes." "Oh, it's no problem. I remember when this one was growing up and how full of energy she was," Minato said while pointing a thumb over his shoulders at Mito that was a few feet behind him. Said girl pouted slightly and her mother, who was standing next to her, giggled into her hand while watching her daughter. "Yes, they do grow up fast," was Retsu's reply. "Now excuse me. I must go and make sure that my husband and my friend's husband don't destroy anything," she said and turned to leave. "I must also go to make sure that those same two people don't do anything rash while I'm gone. Forgive me for interrupting you, Nora." He then turned and walked back the way he came. "My God, who was that woman?" said a young man with feral features. She had the body of a bombshell. "I think that young man was quite handsome, don't you agree, Mito? He only looks a few years older than you," said Kushina. "Mom? I told you that I'm not looking right now. Plus, I think those two girls were his kids. I mean they look similar enough to pass off." "Well, you wouldn't be wrong in the sense that those two girls were his kids. So, I recommend that if you're looking for a partner to not follow in your pursuit of him." Nora spoke since the people had left. "He is also very faithful to the woman that he is married to. So, seducing him won't work either." The few of the women that Mito had guessed were single, pouted of muttered a curse. If Mito heard right it sounded like lucky bitch. She then listened as Nora continued. As for the woman. She turned to look at the young man that had made his comment and with a kind and almost too innocent of a smile said. "That would be one of our queens and her stepchild, Nell, that she was with." The group froze, each turning ahead to the now pale feral-looking young man. Realizing that what he said in front of a guard might have not been one of his brightest decisions. "Now then, we are almost there. Let us hope that no more interruptions occur. Please follow me." Nora then turned around and continues to walk down the street like as if it were any normal day. The Konoha group though just continued forward not saying anything. Letting, unintentionally, an awkward silence befell the group as they followed the young girl to where they would be staying. With most thinking, after hearing the comment about the queen, that their start wasn't the best they could have had. The end. So how was this part? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this part with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.